Alright, we finally got ourselves a new Halo game. After that god-awful Halo 5 game, this game has a lot to make up for. Does it? I'll explain what I mean in a little bit, but first, grab a good, nice, comfy chair, a good snack, because I'm going to go through everything. I've broken this review down into 3 parts: the campaign, the multiplayer, and the monetization. With that out of the way, let's jump right into it, but first, let's take a word from our sponsors.
This video has been sponsored by games that are actually finished when they come out. Remember when that was a normal practice? When games come out and the dev studio didn't immediately have to apologize for having missing content or a broken game, and there was no day one patches? Am I just getting old, or is this how things are now? Or has the gaming community put more pressure on these gaming studios to put games out as quickly as possible rather than to come out with a finished product?
The world may never know.
Alright, let's start this off with the campaign. The game continues the story of Master Chief from Halo 5 without going too in-depth into the previous game's stupidly overhyped story. You start out getting your ass handed to you by a brute chieftain and being thrown out into deep space to float around until someone finds you for like the 3rd time in this franchise. If I was a bad guy in this series, maybe instead of throwing Chief into space, you just, I don't know, shoot him in the face? Anyway, you're saved by this annoyingly pessimistic engineer who was also floating in space for about 6 months. And it doesn't seem like there was any food in this pelican or any remnants of this man's bodily functions, but that's just me being nitpicky. You're introduced to another AI named The Weapon, who always looks at you in a really creepy way, and they just kind of drop you off in this big open world with lots of enemies to kill. The story throughout this entire campaign is very basic. I can't say that it's bad, but it's nothing amazing either. It's just very inoffensive and safe. I think the writers got too scared to try anything exorbitant after the thrashing they got about Halo 5's story. There were some parts in the story that tugs on your heartstrings, makes you feel something, but those moments are very few and far between. Most of the time you're just listening to audio logs, or that stupid brute scream at you while you ignore his every word and dispatch his seemingly endless army with ease. A lot of the campaign is spent quietly climbing hills with the grappling hook and throwing as many grenades at enemies that it feels like you're dropping airstrikes on the ground below. I have to praise the movement mechanics in this game though. With the addition of the grapple hook and the slide mechanics, moving around in this open world just feels great. No hill is too tall, no area of the map is too far away for you to slingshot your way while abusing the momentum. I've already seen countless clips of people traversing the entire map with a few quick tricks akin to the likes of those in Breath of the Wild, where they find new ways to abuse the physics engine in that game. Sadly, where this game falls flat is the fact that there's no co-op campaign that it's available on day one, and that's a huge detriment to this campaign, as it makes all the flaws of the story much more apparent. With a friend, the vehicles feel more fun to use, but alone, they're more like a hindrance, as you can get almost anywhere with a grappling hook, and you cannot rely on the UNSC AI to help you kill anything other than themselves. The more boring parts of the story would be less noticed had I had someone to play with. The fondest memories I have of the Halo campaign were always contributed by my buddies and I getting away with silly antics, and it just isn't as fun to pull off those silly antics when you have no one to share them with. Don't get me wrong, the campaign is fun, and I had a good time playing through it. The weapons all function well, and killing enemies is still very satisfying, especially when you pull off some cool moves with a neat physics engine that Halo has been come to known for. Do I think the game benefited from being an open world though? No, not really. I feel like they just took the concept of an open world to its very basic principles and stretched it over the Halo story to fit that concept, rather than the other way around. There are map markers all over the place for you to check off boxes, but none of it feels very real. You're just kind of going through the motions mindlessly without really focusing on anything. Kill an outpost here, destroy a radio tower there, blah blah blah. It's all just very basic. There isn't even a lot of things to do on the map. I found myself completing most of the open world aspects fairly quickly and then just walking to the next story mission unsatisfied. It's like they only wanted the game to be 8 hours long like the rest of the campaigns have been, but they put it in an open world, and normally open world stories take much longer as there is way more to do. All in all, the campaign is a fun little adventure, but it's over way quicker than you expect, and there aren't as many epic moments to the missions like there were in the previous games. But grunts say funny things, so that's sometimes cool. A lot of the time you find yourself going through endless Forerunner underground tunnels, killing wave after wave of enemies, and all the fun, crazy stuff happens on the surface when you're checking off boxes in the open world checklist. It's fine. Though I will ask, why the hell can I not choose to redo missions in the main menu to get audio logs and skulls that I missed without having to redo the entire campaign? Like, how is that not a thing? The Master Chief Collection allowed you to choose any level at my whim with the different settings along with scoring and timers. But this game, once you beat everything, you're just kind of left on this barren, empty world with nothing to do except check more boxes. The campaign is fun, but it really lacks the replay value I was hoping for. Now, let's dig into my favorite aspect of Infinite, the multiplayer. This was the thing I was most excited for in this game, the multiplayer. Oh, the countless hours my buddies and I spent playing the multiplayer in all the previous games, killing BKs and teabagging their corpses as we killed the rest of their team. I so desperately needed something multiplayer to play with my friends because Warzone was getting extremely stale, and I'm sure if you've played Warzone, you're already aware of the problem with the hackers. Only the old guard still played Apex, and Battlefield? That game needed more time in the oven. As for Infinite, the fundamentals are all here. Everything works as intended, or at least kind of. The melee lunges and damage feels a little inconsistent. I have found myself multiple times hitting an enemy with a melee only to see that I did no damage even with the hit marker and the sound showing up. And I have found myself on the receiving end of that too, where I was expecting the sweet embrace of death, and instead I survived something that seemed to be fatal. The maps are all designed pretty well. The spawns could be a little bit better, but sadly, most multiplayer games have issues with that, so I can't fault them too much. The guns all feel satisfying to use, with the exception of a few guns. The pulse carbine might be good in the campaign, as the bullets are projectiles and they track, but in the multiplayer, actual players move around way too much for this gun to be actually viable, and you find yourself missing most of the rounds while an enemy mows you down from halfway across the map with the AR. Also, the Stalker Rifle has a 2x zoom, but takes like 4 shots to kill, while the Arc Rifle has a 1x zoom, but takes 1 headshot to kill, which just seems very ass-backwards to me. The main gripe I have with the multiplayer is the lack of variation. The game launched with 4 playlists, just 4, and none of them was Slayer, which is just mind-boggling to me. How are you going to make a Halo game and not have Slayer? Most people just want to kill shit in Halo, which is even more apparent when you play an objective-based game and you lose consistently because your team is too busy just randomly killing everyone to worry about protecting the flag or capturing zones. The Master Chief Collection was the perfect UI for multiplayer playlists. You have loads of different game types to choose from. Granted, there aren't nearly as many maps in Infinite as there is in the Master Chief Collection, but they still could have at least used it for a framework for the game. Instead, they decided 4 playlists was enough, and it just feels like a slap in the face to all the Halo fans that were ready to delve into this game. Also, no custom games or Forge. I know they warned people about that beforehand, but that doesn't make it any less annoying that we're already getting significantly less content than we did from the previous entries into the franchise. There's so much that was not thought out before release that you can't help but think that this was by design, which leads me to my next point, monetization. This game is free, kind of. On Xbox, you can get it with Game Pass, which I highly recommend for anyone with an Xbox and a decent internet connection. And on the PC, the multiplayer is straight up free, with Steam having the campaign to be purchased separately. And with all the reviews out there of the story, I can guess that not a lot of people are going to be willing to do. Day 1 availability on Game Pass is awesome, but almost immediately tainted by the Battle Pass and the shop monetizing anything that looks cool on your Spartan. Shit, they even monetized colors. You can't change the basic colors without having to either unlock them via the campaign, the Battle Pass, or just buying them in the shop. The Battle Pass was also tainted in the early days of release by gamers finding out that the progression on it was almost non-existent. You got no progression for just playing games, and instead had to focus on these randomly generated challenges, which some were game type specific. And as I mentioned before, since you only have 4 playlists, you had no way to choose those game types to actually achieve those challenges. You just had to rely on the luck of the draw, which ended up causing people to either quit out early in the matches so they could get the right game type, which leaves you with brain-dead AI, which is more harmful than helpful, or just straight up abandoning the actual objective in order to complete their arbitrary challenges. the things you do end up unlocking only for one type of armor as well. So if you get a cool helmet, you could use it on a set of armor, and maybe you got a cool color scheme for the other set. Well, now you have to choose one, or pony up and buy the color scheme for the other set, which all just feels by design to milk as much money as possible from the player base. Everything about this game is marred by the unnecessary challenge bullshit and the monetized shop. All the cool exclusive armor upgrades and the neat helmets that used to be given out by completing difficult tasks or being chosen by Bungie are now just waiting to be purchased by premium currency. Thankfully, people complained immediately, and they fixed the playlist issue to some extent and made the progression in the Battle Pass much more achievable by the average player. Alas, it left a bad taste in my mouth, as it has me very worried for the schemes that 343 is going to come up with next to weasel people out of their money. Personally, I think they need to implement a free currency that you can earn to use to purchase things in the store based on your performance in-game. Right now, you can complete challenges and play games and just progress through the Battle Pass with no regard for how well you actually do, and I think that, for a lack of a better word, is lame. You should reward people for playing well. It's not that hard. All in all, Halo's fundamentals are there. The game feels fun to play, but I don't really think that aspect is thanks to 343 Industries at the helm. And I think they're more just benefiting by the groundwork that Bungie has laid out for them. They added some fun mechanics, yeah, and the game still feels like Halo, but I think with such a popular title and such a massive amount of money that Microsoft has at their disposal, they could have done way better than what we got. The game isn't even fully out yet, and the only reason there isn't an uproar in the Halo community is because the game is free to play, therefore the people complaining about it are drowned out by the fanboys yelling, "But it's free!" No co-op campaign. Whack! No custom game. Whack! No Forge. Whack! No Slayer playlist at the start. Whack! It's just a very lukewarm game from a company that is just buying up companies just to put them in a little collection box to show them off at E3 or whatever game show comes next. It's still Halo, which is great, but it really could have used so much more that it's just kind of disappointing. Hopefully, as time goes on, they add more to the game to make it more of the Halo that fans have come to know and love.
That's all I have for today, but please let me know in the comments below if you agree or you disagree, and if you haven't yet, maybe consider hitting the like or subscribe button, because I could really use those dopamine hits, especially after having to talk about this game for so long. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.